Thought this week it would be really fun to talk about O'Neill, especially because a couple days ago I just saw a random TikTok of like O'Neill mentality and it showed a bunch of like funny, happy scenes. And I realized that anytime I'm in not a great mood, if I watch some clips of O'Neill, I'm immediately in a better mood.
Yes.
And I mean, I know there's many things to talk about, but I thought like about with the character of O'Neill. But I thought it'd be cool to do. I realized we didn't do an episode where we talk about the character of O'Neill. We've talked about some other characters and some kind of overall character dynamics of SG-1, but never about specifically O'Neill and the portrayal of the character and what the character kind of gave to the show
Yeah.
because I actually think it's quite important, like overall. And so, yeah,
Yes.
I thought we just kind of start with maybe sharing our first impressions of what we comes to our mind when we think of the character of O'Neill.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I definitely think too, like O'Neill's like the heartbeat of Stargate. Like,
That's a good
you
way of
know?
putting it. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, especially like with SG-1, when it first starts, everything was very heavily based on O'Neill. And part of that was just because like of the character, but also I think part of that is that like Richard Dean Anderson was like the most known one on the cast, and I think he was also a producer on the show, and so it's like a selling point, right, to try and get interest in the show. And so yeah, I guess the first thing I would think of when I think of O'Neill is I think of like sarcastically funny.
That's I was about to say like probably something very similar, good sense of humor.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think that's probably I mean, to differentiate, we are talking in this episode about O'Neill with two L's. We're not talking about the O'Neill with one L because I don't know if you've actually seen the movie, but I do consider it two different characters.
I don't remember seeing the movie. Like I've seen the other movies, we've
Yeah.
watched like, you know, throughout, the different series of Stargate. I have seen the other movies that come along, but I don't remember seeing the movie. If I did, it would have been so long ago that I just don't remember it at all. But I think I would remember because like I really love what's his name? James, is it James
James
Spader?
Spader. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that actor. He's amazing. And I think I would have remembered if I saw him playing Daniel Jackson, because that's weird to me that he played Daniel Jackson just because I've seen him, many years later in many different shows, that I couldn't envision that because of the later shows I've seen him in. But he's an amazing actor, and so I think I would have remembered. So yeah, I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's the reason that Daniel had a weird haircut in the beginning because they're
Yeah.
copying his haircut. But I think, I mean, they did bring over some qualities of O'Neill, and I think Richard Dean Anderson gave a certain flavor to the character that made the character actually really, I don't know, for me, I don't want to say like, not necessarily like you have empathy with the character, but it made the character sort of extremely intriguing to invest in. Like
Yeah.
you, because there is, of course, the military side. There is, of course, that he's kind of, I mean, he's not one to, oh, he knows when it's important to obey the rules and when it's important to not obey the rules.
Yeah.
And I think this kind of attitude that he had in terms of his ethics actually then spilled out into other characters and other aspects of the show. Same with the humor and the character dynamics, which I mean we can talk
Yeah.
about as well. Um, and then also just so many of the little qualities, like how he was with kids in the show and how sort of open he was. And like, I feel like it's the type of person where if you knew them in real life, like, and you probably know what I mean, like these kind of people that if you run into them when you're having like the worst crisis of your life or something and you have to go into a meeting with them, somehow you will not be upset when you leave. Like you could be
Yeah.
having, like somehow they have an attitude that makes you feel like you can conquer anything. And I
Yeah.
think, if I were to say there's sort of two, like, I mean, there's so many things that could sum up O'Neill. But, some of the things, other than, they don't leave people behind, there's the sense of humor, but there's always this one on when they're about to go to Sokar, on the planet where Sokar is, and they're trying to get Carter to dig up the memories to figure out how she got off first, how Jolinar got off that place first before they go. And they're not about to not go, but no, we can figure it out. We're good. We need to solve this problem and everything. And O'Neill says something like, well, Jolinar escaped, right? And Murtaugh is like, yeah, but we don't know how. And he's like, it's been done. It's been done before. It can be done again, basically.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's another important tenet that I think.
Yeah. 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 And I think, sometimes he'll play up almost pretending like he's clueless, but I think
Yes.
he's actually very wise and knows and understands a lot more of what's going on than he gets credit for. Like he kind of plays that up a bit. Um, but he's always, like you said, like he's someone that is very dependable and always, there's been so many times with like his fellow SG-1 members that, like with Carter, maybe like she's reached a point where she feels like she's usually pretty good with like keep trying kind of attitude, but there's been some episodes where it's like maybe she can't, feels like she
Hmm.
can't, or she'll blame herself for something or whatever. And a lot of times he'll be there to help keep her going, kind of thing. So, um, and yeah, it's a very important character that is there that it makes it quite difficult when he's no longer there, less often there from season 9. um,
Well, I
but
think
yeah.
I wonder also, like another thing that I think O'Neill brought to the show that's maybe a little bit more subtle, um, is that he was often one that kind of made fun of the genre a lot in a way, and
Mm,
like brought up the cliches and kind of brought this flavor where Stargate was a very self-aware show.
mhm.
And so I think this could have gone very differently if we had a very serious person cast in this role that was like a typical, I mean, if you can imagine it was the late 90s, right? So it could have
Yeah.
been this complete like bravado macho guy, and there would never be any of this. And I think that's one thing that makes the show a bit more forgiving in the fact that, of course, they're cliches. It's a sci-fi TV show.
Yeah.
It's many years old, and I think it also helps it like not be dated because, of course, there's silly stuff in there, and the glow old, they're really over the top. But he kind of
Yeah.
makes fun of it, and I think that's one aspect of his character that, like, one, it does this to the show so that you the show is very self-aware, and I think it makes the show feel more intelligent as a result. Um, but it also kind of manipulates the viewer's sense of danger. And I think a
Yes.
lot of
Yeah.
times O'Neill's character does that.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I find interesting is I had watched an interview with Joe Flanagan on Dial the
Mm.
Gate, and he actually brought up how Richard Dean Anderson basically brought like Stargate to like what it is basically and was especially for SG-1 in Atlantis. And he was mentioning how he felt that had it not been for Richard Dean Anderson choosing to play his character in that way, and because if I remember correctly, like that was something they switched to. Like I don't think
Hmm.
initially he was supposed to play the character in that way, but then he just kind of naturally added in the humor and then they wrote it into the character. And so if you think about that, from that point, that similar kind of humor was written into other characters and maybe a slightly different way, but it was there. And that continued to like Atlantis, like John Shepard had similarities to
Yep.
like things that he would say. It was still very much so a different character, but it was still that similar like humor that was put in there. And and the other characters too. So I found it interesting that, Joe Flanagan was basically saying, like, he actually said in that interview something along the lines of that's what he felt they kind of did wrong with Universe, was that they took that out completely and it's like a whole different show altogether. And so, because he was saying the heart of Stargate, or I don't know if he says the heart, maybe that's where I got that.
Maybe,
Maybe,
yeah.
maybe
Like that
subconsciously,
sounds really profound.
subconsciously, maybe that's where I got it. Because I swore he said something along the lines of the heart of Stargate is that basically that kind of sense of humor. Yeah, maybe I by accident stole that from him without realizing. But yeah, or he said something along those lines that basically meant that. And yeah, so I just like I can't imagine, like, I think if that wasn't there, I'm not sure. Like you were mentioning, can you imagine O'Neill, as being a very different character? And what came to mind was, do you remember, and I don't remember his name though, so let's see if I can tell you who I'm talking about. So in Atlantis, there's an episode where they basically think that they're going to have to destroy Atlantis in order to prevent like the Wraith from getting the Ancients' technology. And basically, like all this, like they're being attacked by Wraith, all these things are going on. And then they're thinking they're having to do like a self destruct and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, this macho guy comes in with a bunch of other like army people and he's just acting like he's gonna get shit done, and like but
Oh yeah, yeah.
he's very like trying to take control of everything almost to the extreme where he should be listening to Weir and he's not wanting to listen to her. He's treating her like, because she's not military, like don't even talk to me kind of attitude. And he's like very like headstrong with how he feels about things, and it ends up biting him in the butt later because he ends up getting attacked by a wraith and becomes much older and basically has to go back home like that basically. um but and I can't remember what that character's name is because I'm terrible with names, but do you know who I'm talking about?
I
He's kind
vaguely
of
remember
like,
the episode, yeah.
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 And all I thought is, oh my gosh, imagine if O'Neill would have been that type of like rough and tough character. And like that probably would have just made all of the episodes much more like life or death, much more serious, much, it would have been an odd combination with the Goa'uld, I think. I think if there
Yep.
wasn't humor there, it would have been such a strange contradiction. So probably things would have been written slightly differently, or portrayed slightly differently. So in an odd sense, by having that one character communicate in the way that they communicate, it kind of made a trajectory of all the other characters.
It's so true, right? And I
Yeah,
mean, probably that's how like they probably picked O'Neill, for example, for to get the ancient repository on purpose, like because of the character. And yeah, I don't know. I totally feel like if the show would have had that approach, it would have been a lot less dialogue and cast focused and maybe more focused on action. And I do
yeah,
feel like that would have probably for me, that wouldn't have been as interesting to watch.
yeah,
I mean, I also think O'Neill contributed a lot to the way that ensemble cast and banter was developed in the show, because I think O'Neill has always these sarcastic one-liners, but then there's also the way that he would interact with the characters. And to kind of like when you think, yeah, okay, there's quite a lot of like characterization of, say, Shepard or even Mitchell, that some parts of it are taken from O'Neill. I think even Vala, to some extent, that
yeah,
character has some O'Neill traits. I almost feel like they saw maybe Vala as a little bit of a kind of counterweight to O'Neill being kind of less present, or in the
yeah,
end totally absent. But it's interesting because there's of course characters, but I think there's also this aspect of the character interaction and dynamics that I think was heavily impacted by O'Neill because of how he would then interact with characters. And then this sort of banter was incorporated into, season 9 when he was gone, and also into Atlantis. I don't think it's quite as incorporated into universe, so I think in that sense it's also another one where it doesn't quite apply in the same way. But I do think it permeated. I mean, it permeated also other characters in SG-1, for example.
Yeah.
Like then they kind of designed this kind of banter in other circumstances, and even between, enemies in SG-1, or like, between, Teal'c and Jonas Quinn, or between, you know, I mean, Daniel and O'Neill is kind of like this model that then
Yeah.
got
Oh
sort
my
of,
gosh. Especially later seasons, I love the Daniel and O'Neill like banter. Like it's like it's just hilarious because I feel like, Daniel Jackson kind of progresses to a certain point that by the later seasons he's very different from how he was in the beginning seasons. And then it's almost like he's braver to be able to communicate with O'Neill
yeah.
in a way that is hilarious. It's like this like brotherly annoyance that they get with each other.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's amazing. And I have to say, like, I can't help it. One of my favorite O'Neill moments is when he's in Atlantis, and when him and Woolsey have this whole,
Yes.
like, this is just this two-parter, it's just peak. And like
Yeah.
I love, like, this is one of my favorite parts of like SG-1 Atlantis, when you're watching both, if you watch them concurrently and you're like on season 10 of SG-1 and season 3 of Atlantis, and then there's this crossover episode with Woolsey and O'Neill in Atlantis, and the banter is like cranked to like max.
Oh
And
my
then he's
gosh, yeah.
bantering because you have McKay, and then you have O'Neill who's bantering off of McKay and the people in Atlantis. And they have, Atlantis is now in season 3, so they have really developed characters, and it's just perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm definitely looking forward to the rewatch of that once I reach that with Taylor. Um but because we're not quite there yet. I forget where we're at, but we're not at that point yet. But yeah. And what's interesting too though is like that's where everything shifts and changes for universe because the few times in the very beginning where O'Neill kind of makes little appearances here and there in universe, I felt like he actually played the character quite differently in that,
Mm.
where he wasn't making any kind of jokes really. And if he did, it didn't land in the same way that I really noticed it, if that makes sense. Everything was so much more serious that it felt actually quite strange for O'Neill to even be there, in my opinion. Like I felt like it felt really weird. Um, and probably what felt weird was because O'Neill, even in serious situations, would always have a quirkiness and silliness about how he would talk about those situations. And in universe, he doesn't. In universe, he's very like kind of almost grilling and mad at the other people. And it's just a whole different vibe.
Yeah, I remember when we first started watching Universe, I remember you writing me and saying something like this. Like, I think O'Neill's different. And I think at the time I had only seen the beginning. Like, I can't remember
Yeah.
if maybe you got further than me at the beginning, and then I
Yeah.
kind of caught up and went past because like one day when I watched a ton of it.
Yeah.
But I remember that in the beginning episode, I don't think he, like, to me, I remember thinking, oh, but he did make, this sarcastic comment. But what you just said about maybe it didn't land as well, I wonder
Hmm.
if there's something to that, like, there's a different vibe. And so since everything surrounding him was not quite that same kind of, that
Yeah.
maybe it almost then just kind of got like
Yeah.
tuned down or something, and then you couldn't notice.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
did feel, I think that's a good way of putting it. Everything did feel more toned down, like in terms of how if we were to see a clip of how he would communicate in SG-1 early on
Hmm.
and then take a clip of when he was in universe. That actually would have been interesting to show here, actually, is
Yeah.
maybe we can do that. Maybe we could
Yeah.
show an early clip of O'Neill, in SG-1 and then a clip of when he's in universe, to show the differences and see if people feel the same way or not.
Yeah, because it's interesting because I feel like universe, I mean, obviously it's not that far. It's right after Atlantis. And he does appear in Atlantis the whole it's not like there's 20 years have passed or something between when he
Yeah.
appears. However, there is like, I don't know what, 13 years, maybe even more between the first episodes of SG-1 and his last appearances on Atlantis. And while there's character growth, like I think the core aspect of the character didn't change. Like I remember seeing him in Atlantis, he's the same kind of quirky attitude, like sarcastic
Yeah.
humor and banter kind of thing as he was in the very beginning. With, obvious the character growth that all of them have kind of gone through in the, 8, 9 times, probably 15 times of saving the world at this point. I don't know, probably
Hmm.
more. Um, but I think it's interesting then if it's so stark in universe, then that's quite a lot of shift in a short time. And I do kind of wonder how much of it is the atmosphere in the show that like sort of
Yeah.
surrounds him.
Yeah. It's probably all of the above, you know? It's probably all of
Yeah.
that, like everything about it. I'd be curious to notice because I can't like I know like in the past when we've talked about like the look of universe,
Yeah, true.
the colors, the different things that they do, like with how they show a scene versus how they show a scene in SG-1 or Atlantis. It's all, I think, probably unique to its own style of how they portray all of that, from the sound to the color to everything. So that all affects it, because I do remember like when they showed O'Neill in Universe, at least my memory of it is that the colors were dulled down,
Yep.
um and it was everything felt very serious.
Yep.
And so like, because even when O'Neill is serious in SG-1, it's not in a subdued way. It's in
Yes, that's
like
true.
it's in a like, this is a dire situation. We need to be thinking about this, this, and this. And it's kind of like his leadership skills take over. And even if he's not being silly and quirky, like um it's like you feel like he's in control of it all and it makes sense. But I
Yeah.
think in universe, to me at least, maybe I'll think differently when I rewatch it. I don't know. Maybe it will feel less weird because then I'll know what to expect and maybe I'll get something different out of it. But that's what I remember initially thinking when I saw him in universe for, what was it? Like a few episodes where he was here and there in it. But
Mhm.
um yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because, like, you're right. Even I think what is something that permeates like SG-1 Atlantis especially is that even when things are humorous, they're also serious. And when things are serious, there's also this lightness to it. And
Yeah.
that's when you get like lines from O'Neill that are actually really, really, pivotal. Like the one where he said, she's going to be taken back to get her brain sucked out. And I dare you to find another way. Or like when Carter sees that the team is on the planet where the black hole is and they're kind of not moving and she's like, wow, you realize we're witnessing, something we're not supposed to be witnessing. And he's like, we are witnessing our like fellow, people dying in slow motion, right? Like very
Yeah.
kind of, he has these very matter of fact things. Or actually, today I was just seeing the episode Prodigy, and at the end, when Haley and Carter are kind of talking about which theory is actually right, and O'Neill leaves, and she's like, "Why did he leave? We don't even know what the real answer is." And Carter's like, "Well, if he leaves, he risks his life. If he doesn't, he risks all of ours. It doesn't matter who's
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
in the end." So it's
Yeah.
kind of like there's this certain aspects of him that I think are like really serious when it needs to be and but yet somehow retain that that sort of pragmatic optimism, you
Yeah.
know?
And then I also think too, like some of the best moments with O'Neill is always involved with his humorous or I guess it's more than just humorous, but like maybe caring relationships, right? So it's kind of like so many people will always ship him and Carter, right?
Yeah.
And so there's always like those sweet moments like where they care for each other, but they're not supposed to say. And, you can tell, and they have their little theme that they play in like those moments. And, or like there's like, I always loved him and Mayborn.
Yes.
That is like one of my favorite duos of all time is him and Mayborn because it's like Mayborn you grow to love and but he's so annoying at the same time. And then O'Neill always gets so annoyed by him, but then at the same time you feel like he actually cares for Mayborn. So it's just kind of this unique and weird relationship there.
Oh yeah. I mean, Paradise Lost is actually such a good episode, and it's really, when you think about it, it's so dark actually, but
Yeah.
somehow, because it's Mayborn and O'Neill, it like isn't totally as dark as you would think when you consider they're stranded on like some what seems to be an island eating this plant that's making them go crazy. But
Yeah.
there are some funny moments. Or
Yeah.
and then at the end, when they finally, the last, I think, episode with Mayborn, I don't know if it's the last one, where he's king and he says to O'Neill, "Oh,
Yeah.
congratulations, you made general." And he's like, "You made king." So I think that was
Yeah.
such a, and it was, I don't know, I really liked the way that that relationship unfolded, because they seemed to
Yeah.
never, like, I don't think O'Neill ever truly like necessarily trusted Mayborn, but he trusted him
Yeah.
in some ways. But like, it kind of, in his O'Neill way, with a healthy dose of like skepticism.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but yet both of them had some development. And I think actually Mayborn did have, he had some personal development over the course of the series too, that I think was really nice to watch. And so watching them kind of come together at various points was, and their Starsky and Hutch thing was, you know.
Yes. Was there any times where O'Neill interacted with a character that you didn't like that dynamic? Because the one I can think of is way in the beginning. I forget what season it was, where they go to that planet where O'Neill gets stuck on the planet and he has a relationship with that lady.
Mhm.
And then they kind of insinuate that she is potentially pregnant at the end, and then you never hear anything ever again.
Oh,
And
oh,
like I've
100
always
days. Yeah.
I always hated her. I couldn't stand her character. Like I it just like everything about her irritated me. And I didn't like that O'Neill had anything to do with her. Just like I didn't like it.
I mean, I think at the time that I watched the episode for the first time, I probably felt like literally exactly the same, because I think I was very heavy about Sam and Jack, and
Hmm.
not knowing, like, if I didn't know what was going to happen or however things turned out. I mean, I watched it very weirdly first. So maybe it was like when I first watched the original like run through.
Yeah.
Um, I remember not really liking her either. Like, it bothered me too, because I think it bothered me that he wasn't with Sam. And I was like, what is
Yeah.
this?
Well, I think it also just felt weird because he kind of just settles into a way of living on that planet that doesn't
Yeah.
feel like it suits him, in my opinion. Like, yes, he likes his time of fishing where there's no fish and kind of having that time out in nature and relaxing, but like I just feel like it didn't make sense to me. Like, I mean, it makes sense in the storyline that like he figured there really was no way he was getting back and he was adjusting. But it was almost like the equivalent of someone masking, right? Like someone masking like how they are in order to fit in an area
Yeah.
that they otherwise wouldn't fit in. And so maybe that's why I was also irritated by his relationship with that lady, because like I felt like she kind of almost forced him like in a subtly manipulative way
Yeah.
to kind of be in this role of taking the place of her husband in a sense, because I think her husband had previously died not that long from that point, and she
Yeah.
had him like borrow their clothes and kind of almost take that role. So I felt like she was almost trying to make him her husband, like that had
Yes.
passed away.
Oh, totally. Well, and it's also like the one thing I think is that I'm not sure O'Neill would have ever given up. I think
Yeah,
he would have every day tried and tried and tried.
something. Yeah.
And I think that's like he is very stubborn in that way. I mean, I do think it's kind of interesting in the very first season. It seems like they do try to do the Captain Kirk thing with him, where he was
Hmm.
like kind of hooked up with different people. But I think they realized very quickly that that doesn't work with that character. Like that
Hmm.
his character just kind of isn't that type. And then I think they started to do it more with Daniel, actually.
Yeah.
Especially once his wife was killed, they really did that with Daniel a lot. But even before, I think there was one because I think the one where the girl that kind of entrapped him and put him in the sarcophagus, that was when his wife was still alive.
Yeah. I kind of feel like with Daniel too, like I wonder if them making his character kind of like all of like the women characters from other planets or Gold or whatever, always kind of flirting with him and going after him. Like, I kind of wonder if part of that was because in real life, people were so like into Michael Shanks
True,
and
yeah.
like, so much so to the point that, then when he left, like people were, doing all sorts of crazy things to get that character back. But I feel like a lot of women had crushes on him, you
Yeah,
know,
I think.
and so I kind of wonder if that played a little into fan service in the sense of being
Yeah.
like, like kind of playing into that viewpoint. But I think it still kind of worked for that character up to a
Yeah.
point. Um, but yeah, you're right. With O'Neill, not so much because to me he feels too stable of a
Yes,
person.
that's exactly.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
less of a bachelor type. He feels very secure. And so like I do feel like they tried to also do that a little bit with Shepard too in the beginning of
Hmm.
Atlantis, but then
Oh,
that
yeah.
also didn't fully pan out. He kind
No.
of became more level-headed and less like flirty, I think, as he continued.
Hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. Because that also, it kind of like, that almost did kind of give a very Kirky vibe. Like,
Yeah.
so, but
Yeah.
yeah. But somehow I also think that then they started implying, I don't know if it was intentional, the implication of him and Weir, but I remember feeling like there were some moments
Who?
between Shepard.
Shepard and oh, who indicated that?
I feel like there were some moments that kind of alluded to Shepard and Weir in Atlantis.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because like I've always thought actually they'd be a good match. Like,
Yeah, they would
and I
actually.
and I think me and you all kind of spoke about this a while back when we were doing
Mhm.
our Atlantis
Yes, totally.
rewatch. And what's interesting is I had always remembered them pushing Taylor at Shepard in the beginning.
Yes, there
And
was
that
also.
actually would have been incredibly strange, I think.
Yep.
I feel like she would make a better match with Ronan.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
totally.
that would make sense too with them like bonding over kind of,
Hmm.
being the odd one out that ends up living, on
Yeah.
Atlantis and being from a different place and things like that would make more sense. And I always did actually feel like Weir and Shepard would
Hmm.
oddly make sense. But yeah, which again is kind of interesting because in a sense that almost takes a similar role to Carter and O'Neill.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think in SGA they're kind of more. It's even makes more sense because they're matched, like they're equal in kind of rank. I think in the end, when you think that.
kinda, yeah.
I mean, she's heading everything, but she's civilian. And then he's military, so he's kind of heading the military aspect of it.
Hmm.
And so I could see where there's a little bit, I mean, of course, she's technically higher, but he's also doing a different branch. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like an universe would be like Young and the one from now the name escapes me of the one from the IOA.
Oh, you were saying young. You're talking about SGU.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was just watching an episode. I can't think of her name. I have her
Anyway, yeah,
face in my mind. Yeah. But the only IOA person that's on SGU, right?
yeah,
She's the
yeah,
only one.
exactly. So yeah, I think it could be, but I think like, I don't know, to me, I think stable is exactly why, like O'Neill is like a golden retriever or something, you know? And
Camille Ray
that's it. Okay,
is, yeah,
Camille.
okay.
Yeah, Weir kept going in my head because we were talking about Weir. But no, I think O'Neill is kind of like he has like that golden retriever vibe. And so I do think it made sense that he kind of collected kids along the way. Like, I mean, not
Hmm.
really like collected them, but he kind of befriended a lot of there were a lot of episodes where he would befriend a kid or something would happen where, he would have to like calm some kid down or talk with them or something and then give them a dog. That was always a every kid gets a dog, like that is such an
Yeah.
O'Neill thing.
Yeah.
It's an Earth rule.
Yeah. And I think it also then reminds you as a viewer, like, oh, yeah, he had a son, he
Yep.
was a dad and like he lost his son. And so it's almost like he's kind of tapping into that very fatherly role that he would have been had his son still been living. And so, because I think it's easy to kind of forget about that after like the first few seasons.
Yes,
Um,
totally, totally.
yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's interesting that they kind of initially pushed a little bit of like the suave lover boy, but then quickly realized that this just doesn't fit the character as
yeah,
much
yeah,
because of the stability. And yeah, I mean also, yeah, when you think about the character of O'Neill, you don't really think, yeah, he would go onto the planet and like immediately want to go to the bar and hook up with people. He was very pragmatic.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I really do think like the character of O'Neill, like when men for many people when they think about what they like about Stargate, it's the vibe that O'Neill gives off,
Yeah.
like that is Stargate. And so yeah, it's kind of like what my mind goes to. Like if I think of Stargate, like and I just kind of think of what like quickly flashes into my mind, it's probably usually like immediately thinking of O'Neill and how he is with everyone else.
Yeah,
Um,
I
that's
would
kind of
think
what like flashes into my mind initially.
me too, for sure. For sure. But yeah, I mean on this sort of subject of his relationships, what ones, I mean both romantically and otherwise, are there some you really like or really dislike? I mean, I know you mentioned already the one in 100 days.
Yeah. Um, I'm trying to think of anyone else. What do I dislike? I mean, I guess like maybe just because I'm not into that storyline too much. I'm not too into him and how like he always gets mad at like the Russian guy that
Oh yeah, Chekhov.
is yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Like it's just not one that like I think of fondly, if that makes sense. It's kind of like even like when O'Neill like interacts with the character like what was his name, Marty, for example, and little side characters that might only be in for like a episode or two. Like I usually like his interactions with them. um but yeah, I mean, I can't really think of any that I really don't like except for him and that lady. Like I says, I love him and Daniel, him and Mayborn. um really how he is with any of the SG-1 team. Like,
Yeah.
him and Tilk even have moments, and him and Carter and um, even how he kind of is with Hammond. It's kind of like any of his character like interactions with other characters I usually like.
Hmm.
Um, because usually it's always like funny in some way because he either gets really irritated by someone and he
Hmm.
expresses that, or it's like a sweet moment where like he's like being like a good friend or whatever. So why do you have any that like you can think of that you either really like or really dislike?
I was just trying to think because I was like, okay, well, other than, I mean, obviously there's Sam, right? There's the Carter relationship with him, and they're kind of, and then he dated that one CIA lady at the very end in season
Oh
eight for
yeah,
like
yeah.
an episode and a half. Aside from that, and those two kind of two or three one-off episodes where they had him involved with someone off-world, and I guess, yeah, and I guess like Hathor, where it was kind of against his will. Did he have any other romantic interests? I'm trying to think.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, in the very beginning, they have him. I mean, I guess it's not necessarily romantic interest, but they have his ex-wife, right?
Hmm.
They have that. He kind of was into Freya, right? A little bit.
I think he wasn't. I think Freya was into him.
Yeah, but I think both him and Daniel were into her, like not necessarily where they'd be into her as so
Oh
much
yeah,
as
yeah.
to wanting to really have a relationship, but I think they were both attracted to her at least.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
But I think it was like she was more into him, and
yeah.
I think that was the episode where they revealed he was into Carter. So like,
Oh, okay. Was that the okay.
because that was the one with the Zaytark,
Well, no,
and
they introduce her before that though.
they do introduce her, but when she confesses her feelings to, when she like kind of, and O'Neill is like taken off guard by this, like because he wasn't expecting it, and then she says, "Oh yeah, but my a niece is more interested in Daniel Jackson." Then I think he's very confused. But that's the episode where he kind of confesses his feelings about Carter, and I think
Oh,
so. I don't. I actually, honestly, I don't know. I couldn't tell you if him and Daniel were really into Freya Anise or not because that's also it's so around the time when he confesses that I don't know. But it's
yeah.
interesting, right? Because when you think about it, that means that probably he is actually the one that ends up with the fewest sort of romantic plot lines.
Yeah. And then maybe it's, I kind of wonder sometimes like how much pull the actors have as to what
Yeah,
happens to their characters because maybe that was partly him not wanting many romantic
yeah.
interactions too. Because, like, I know, for example, the opposite was with Christopher Judge. He wanted to have more romantic relationships, and he's the one that's like always sucking face, like, whenever he has an interest. It just like grosses me out. They always zoom in right at them, like making Teal'c making out with some girl. Um, but he wanted that for his character. So, um,
That's funny though,
yeah,
because it's kind of like Teal Cat. He was like this sort of completely married and stable in the very beginning, and then at the end he had this two sort of more on-scene spicy things. And it was kind of like went in the opposite direction with O'Neill, where they kind of pulled away. I mean, I know Carter and him both had the kind of real relationships at the end, but it's like they really showed those so that they could say they were still into, like it was like to prove that they were still into each other, that even when they're with someone else, it doesn't work. So it's kind of
yeah,
like, but yeah, you're right. Like Teal'c had real face-sucking moments.
yeah, yeah. Which I think was just always more noticeable because of one, how they filmed those scenes, but also because like you don't really get much of that with the other characters. So to me, it always would catch me off guard and just kind of gross me out. Because I just personally don't like scenes where people are making out and they zoom in on them. It's like, okay, I know what's happening here. Like, I don't need to see it.
Or if you hear the sounds like
Oh, yeah, it just
the
grosses me
the
out.
mouth sounds.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that would be just like weird. Like, because like even like when they had like in the episode where, the day keeps repeating and
Hmm.
O'Neill kisses Carter, it was just kind of like done in a very like tasteful way that he
Yeah.
kisses her,
No.
but it's not like, full on makeout session. Let's zoom in on their faces and hear all the gross sounds. Like,
Yeah, or I mean the same thing in like the Mobius when I think they start making out and the back of the time machine,
Yeah.
right? Like they were
Yeah.
just in there and and then they kind of zoom out and then they show the like,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like, okay, yeah, that works. But yeah, I know what you
Yeah.
mean. This kind of zoomed in scenes. I mean, sometimes anyways, when like faces are really zoomed in, I mean, sometimes it works dramatically, but sometimes, especially now when screens can be really big or really high definition, I don't always understand why do you zoom in? And I mean,
Yeah.
Stargate doesn't usually do this, but I've seen like other things where, it's filmed in high definition and it's going to be on like an 80s screen and then it's like super zoomed into their face. And you're like, man, I would
Yeah.
hate that. You can
Yeah.
like see every little pore. You probably like can see like every little tiny like definition of your skin and like even how big your pupil is. Like I would hate that.
Uh, yeah. Yeah. No, I would hate that too. Oh my goodness.
But yeah, no, I think my favorite kind of relationships with O'Neill are his sort of banter ones and a lot of his positive relationships with younger people because he has a mentor role to a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
even with the new kind of recruits, when, how he interacts with the new recruits or how he interacts with his younger self and stuff. So I think he does have this very mentor, stable role throughout the
Yeah.
series, despite being this crazy, sarcastic person that will tell Ball to just like go F himself, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Pretty
it kind of
much.
makes you feel like you want to do the same in the face of like that's how you really should treat all your problems when you think about it. You should treat it the same way that O'Neill treated Ball when he was standing in front of him, like
Oh
say
my
something
gosh.
sarcastic.
That would be a funny experiment, right? Like the O'Neill experiment, and just have people go around acting like him to other people. I have a feeling a lot of people would get punched in the face.
Yes. But on the other hand, I mean, maybe somebody could make a very efficient sort of self-help manifestation course just on behaving like O'Neill, because between his can-do attitude and sort of taking the right things seriously and the right things not seriously, like, I mean, if you took that advice, you probably could design a very, very well done life for yourself. You could do very
Yeah.
well in life.
Yeah.
So,
Well, because I think he does have like a good blend of I know it sounds weird, but like a good blend of the type of human he is, because he has his silly youthful side that's just always going to be there, which I personally really appreciate.
mhm.
And then but yet there's the stable side. And which, sometimes those two things don't always go hand in hand, right? Just with people in general. And so like I appreciate that it's like he's a combination of those two things. Like he's not just like constantly goofing off and not taking anything seriously because he would never have the job that he had, right? Um, and he actually, if like you think about like all the things that he actually really knows how to do, and then also how he's like a pilot and
Yeah,
all
it's
these
crazy.
things, it's like he really downplays his skills
Yeah.
as just part of his character. Like he's very humble with what he's able to do, which I think is why, when you see characters like what is it, Kavanaugh and everything, that are just so arrogant,
The most
and it's
universally
like
hated character.
yeah, and it's like they're very good at what they do, but they just like are so arrogant about it. It's like, ugh, like no.
Oh yeah, I want to see Kavanaugh and O'Neill in the same scene.
Yeah. Would you want to have Kavanaugh make a comeback in the new Stargate
Kind
series?
of, yes. I mean, I love Kavanaugh because I hate Kavanaugh. Like, I really
Yeah.
hate the character, but I think it's a great character. Like, and he plays this character, like, is really well done, this character. Because
Yeah.
nobody, not a single person ever has said, Kavanaugh is amazing. I like him. It's always like, man, I hate that guy. I hate him so much. He annoys me.
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
he's not even like kind of sometimes like Mayborn was, eventually also good. And there's ones that they're a little bit complicated, but it's like, no, Kavanaugh is just a total a-hole the whole time. And I think that kind of It's like one of those perfect things that they did where you know that your expectation was that he wasn't always going to be an asshole. And then he
Hmm.
was. So it's like, good job.
Yeah. I really wish like in the new series that they would have something where like maybe O'Neill's retired or something, but that they need to go to him for some sort of specific help. And they need his expertise and have like a few episodes or something that is solely based on O'Neill helping like the new SG team.
That would be super amazing. I mean, out of
Yeah.
curiosity, do you think, I mean, because I know we kind of mentioned that this O'Neill tone persisted through Atlantis, but not quite through SGU. Do you think that they're kind of maybe going to bring that back a little for the
I
new?
I think so. I think so. I would be really surprised if they didn't because in the grand scheme of things, even though I like Stargate Universe, I feel like for a lot of people they don't. A lot of people don't like Universe and get very triggered by the sheer mention of Universe. Um, and so I feel like it would just be the wrong call if they didn't bring back things from the Stargate that everyone loves. Like there's sure like definitely a higher like number of people I think that really love SG-1 and Atlantis. And
Yeah.
then there's still a decent amount that love SGU, but I feel like if you think of the grand scheme of like all of the fans that, are so engaged with like Stargate content, they're usually referring to SG-1 and Atlantis. And there's a reason for that. So I feel like they need to take those reasons and put those into the new series for it to be like really well loved and continued longer than a season.
Yeah. Well, also, I think in general, people probably would be more interested in that kind of media right now
Yeah.
because I think somehow in, 2009 and 10 and whatnot, everybody liked this very dark kind of
Yeah.
toned things. But I think now probably people appreciate stuff that's a bit more,
Yeah.
probably same as like, I mean, at the time, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned also like O'Neill and his kind of constant like issues with the Russians. But it's so hard. I guess it's hard for us to fathom in this way that really when O'Neill started the show, it's like what, 5 or 6 years after the end of the Cold War. It was really close.
Mm.
So it's kind of like it's like right now how we think of COVID or something. Like it's not actually
Right.
that's not that distant. So I think probably that's why he has this kind of mistrust because he probably fought on the front lines or I mean I know he talked about a lot of things and different wars he was in, but he is in the military, so he probably would have this kind of, Cold War feeling that
Yeah.
didn't it's so weird, right? When you think that how close actually some things were in distance that you didn't quite realize, especially if you
Yeah.
watch a show later. Like I think it was 2006 when I first watched it, and I mean I was a child during all that. So I was, you're aware of the news, but in a very different way.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I was
Um,
just looking, it says the Cold War era lasted from roughly 1947 to 1991.
yep,
And then Stargate SG-1 started in like, was it
97.
97? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's basically like literally the same distance from like us and COVID,
Yeah.
where we probably have the same kind of feelings of how we would think about like, oh my God, a lockdown or something like it's sucks. Like we kind of have it in the memory. Um, like, I mean,
Yeah.
a little bit distant, but so I guess O'Neill would be the same. A little
Yeah.
bit distant, but
I kind of feel with like the new series, like that they're not going to initially have like characters that are known be on it. But I kind of feel like if they continue that they will, if that makes sense. Like I kind of wonder if their first season is going to be of getting used to a whole new cast and people, loving those characters and then it becomes successful in that way and then they add in characters that have been in SG-1 and Atlantis and maybe universe throughout. Like if they continue, like I wonder if they're going to do that because I kind of feel like maybe they're set on not having anyone that's like been in it before, like as a main character at least.
Yeah, I mean, what I could probably see is something kind of what they did in Universe, where everybody is new, but like you have a couple people from the original series cameo in the very beginning,
Yeah. Yeah.
just to kind of re-anchor people, I guess. I could see
Hmm.
that. Just to re-anchor, because then you kind of orient yourself as, oh, this is Stargate. And I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
they would do that. But yeah, I don't think like in the main cast they will necessarily have anybody from the originals. I think if there's anybody from the originals, they will be like in the role of like what General Hammond or Dr. Frasier or something like that, where it's maybe more of a recurring character but not part of the main cast.
Hmm.
Because I agree, I think it would be making more sense that it follows a different team.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I could definitely see them kind of as regular recurring characters.
Yeah. I mean, I would be so excited if they had, people from past
Hmm.
series come back. So I'm not saying I don't want that. It's just um like for example, when Joe Flanagan was talking on Dial the Gate, he was saying that like, you know, I mean, granted, like he said, like there would be non-disclosure agreements and stuff, but he was being honest with saying like he hadn't been contacted for anything about the new series. Like he did say he was getting the chance to be in the writer's room for like them like talking about ideas. So after that point, he probably wouldn't be able to talk about anything. So maybe, but like as far as his character coming back, he was flat out saying like he hasn't been contacted for anything about that. So
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't, who knows what they would do. I could imagine a couple being in I mean, I think in Universe it was really just like O'Neill and Carter and maybe Daniel Jackson
yeah,
in the
Daniel
first,
Jackson.
in the
Yeah.
first beginning. Like in the first, I'm thinking the first season when they kind of really,
Because I remember there being an episode where Daniel Jackson was there and I think O'Neill. Because it was like that weird scene where it was kind of cool though, but it was like where like Daniel Jackson was kind of being almost very like spy like, and he had all this
yeah.
like things like gear that he was like I think spying on the Lucian Alliance or something like that. I can't remember fully what it was, but um yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess like we've kind of went through like all this stuff like about O'Neill that at least we can think up. Like, do you have anything else to add before we end?
No, I like love the characters so much. And I hope that
Yeah.
there is some of this in the new series. And I would be
Yeah.
interested to hear from people, what is your favorite O'Neill moments?
Yeah.
Tell us some classics
Yeah.
because I love it. And I was so happy like to see this O'Neill mentality like things that
Yeah.
people are making out there on TikToks, reels about O'Neill and bringing that kind of humor to new generations and different people that
Yeah.
maybe didn't see it before.
Yeah. And maybe moments that are less talked about too that they love with O'Neill.
Yeah, because there's also some of those. I think there's a lot of very underrated O'Neill moments.